I have one complaint against panel 2. The complaint is that there were no women in it. And so I'm very pleased that for the third panel, we have a woman moderator, and we have 2 out of 4 speakers who are women. The third panel will be moderated by the Chief Executive Officer of the National Heritage Board. National Library Board. What did I say? Oh dear. The reason is that Elaine and I had, in our previous incarnations, worked together at the National Heritage Board. But she's had a very distinguished academic and professional career. She studied at Cambridge in England and Brandeis in the United States. And she worked for many years in the Ministry of Defense before she joined the National Heritage Board. So she has been my boss twice. She was my boss at the National Heritage Board, and now I have great pleasure in working for Elaine in helping to put together the second International Summit of the Book. Elaine, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start this panel discussion, I just wanted to share that I asked a few of my young colleagues to share with me what they thought the future of the libraries would be like. I started from the assumption that the future library was perhaps not for people like myself, but for those who were a couple of decades, oh dear, I've revealed my age, but a couple of decades younger than me. One of them shared with me a sauna being built at the Central Library in Helsinki, with a comment that there was no limit to how a library can incorporate the aspirations of their stakeholders. And I thought that was really interesting. And this notion of building up customer capital was also manifested in another idea shared by another young librarian, and that's the idea store, I think, that was in the UK, which is a notion of a library together with shared public services. So I think one of the questions that this panel will be looking at is whether libraries are becoming libraries of people rather than just libraries of books, and whether libraries of books might be turning into museums of books now that we have heard about the future of books. And in the new technology-driven era, how do libraries remain cathedrals of learning, as Ambassador Ko has very kindly named libraries to be? And I guess ultimately whether we have to ask ourselves, will libraries be a force for change, or forced to change, or not for change? And on that note, thankfully as a moderator, I don't have to answer all these questions. I have 4 esteemed colleagues, and I'd like to introduce them and invite them to come and join me on the stage. Dr. Jianzhong from Shanghai Library. Doctor, please join me. Dr. Shalini from the University of Mysore. Dr. Claudia Lux, who was from the Berlin Library and is now in charge of the Qatar Library. And last but not least, my old friend, Bill Macnaught, the National Librarian of New Zealand. Bill, be careful. Okay. So, to get us started, we have Dr. Jianzhong, who will share with us his thoughts about where libraries are headed and how he sees the future of libraries, maybe from a Chinese context as well. So, Dr. Wu, please.
Thank you. Ms. Elaine, do you remember in Puerto Rico conference, you asked me a question, what is the value of library? And I answered, but frankly, I myself was not satisfied with that answer. In the last 2 years, I've been thinking over as my homework, and today I try to resubmit this. Have you re-evaluated it? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My talk includes 3 keywords: people, flow, and value. Let me start with the first keyword, the people. A month ago, I attended an archivist meeting. To my surprise, I heard they say that Lao Tzu was their earliest national archivist, because we librarians often call Lao Tzu a national librarian. And then I realized that library and archive share the same history, but divided later. But what's the significant difference between the two? And I think it is the position of people. Modern library originates from book clubs. In 1727, Benjamin Franklin established a club called Junto, that is a discussion group. And 4 years later, an offshoot library company of Philadelphia was set up to provide relevant resources for information. And this is so-called the first social library in America. In March 1849, the first book club in Shanghai's modern history was established at an English physician, Dr. Thomas Cook's house. Then 2 years later, it was renamed the Shanghai Library. In the 1930s, when municipal libraries yet to be set up, numerous local clubs evolved into libraries. It is thus safe to conclude that a library in modern times is a library for people instead of library for books, which is needed by human communication and discussions. Unfortunately, however, when library develops into a mature shape, we forget the most critical component, the people. Library has become the guardian of books, and we are concerned only with the book damaged by readers. Should we reevaluate library as a people-centered entity, we shall perceive the urgency of changes. In terms of evaluation indicators, we use to assess library performance according to the library collection, lending rate, and then digital service. But now, we are paying more attention to the number of programs, since we wish to invite people to communicate with each other in this third place. Given the prosperity of social media, we are aware of people's need of communication and sharing. And a library can provide people with a social space for people-to-people or face-to-face interaction, which cannot be afforded by social media. Different from museums or cafes, this third place is filled with books and information, so that dialogues are easy among people or between people and information. Today, library has become a meeting center. For instance, it has been 35 years since the Shanghai Library held its first public lecture. Their popularity increases their frequency. To date, lectures are being held almost every other day in the main library. We are developing a lecture library that amasses various lectures resources. People could participate in a lecture, or they can view over 800 lecture videos online, or they can enroll for singing or recitation groups organized by the library. In other words, lecture library is not only a MOOC, or MOOC online, but also a learning commons of lecturers, audience, and all kinds of information related to lectures. The second keyword is flow. That means that information should flow freely. Information is fluid, yet we often set limits to it. Sometimes such limits are placed to protect intellectual property rights, such as DRM. Yet, other times we unconsciously set up numerous obstacles that obstruct the free flow of information. While human knowledge is dynamic, it becomes static or dead when entering library. Digitization should have solved problem with its ubiquitous and nonlinear nature, yet we fail to fully utilize such an advantage. Instead, we remain obsessed with books to the extent of expecting digital resources to take the form of books. Mark records, mark formats, and electronic books are the two telling examples. Book is lifeless. You can read it, but you cannot communicate with it. Information is alive, with its value being added through each exchange. Digitization has liberated information from the shape of books and provides us with multiple perspectives to process information. Digitization offers us a chance to go beyond books and beyond the walls of library, but we are still used to follow the traditional path. It is high time for library to change. We used to catalog for shelving, but we are now cataloging to add correlations or connections among information, so as to keep the life of information and to diversify channels of access. We used to arrange departments according to the workflow of books, but such design has become obsolete because the knowledge-based service has changed the flow of information. For instance, a staff at the front desk can also do acquisitions, cataloging, and reference. Once the information is given open access, its vitality is manifest, accessible via multiple channels and interactive with the society. So we are playing a vital role in building the critical connections between information, knowledge, and learning. The third keyword is value. To add value, we need to stimulate human desires to communicate and to activate information mobility. In other words, people are the actor, whereas flow is the means. Information could have its value added only if people participate in the process and if information is given open access. While traditional library takes preservation as its core mission, modern library should attach importance to both preservation and utilization, with the latter weighing even over the former. Therefore, the operation of library should be changed. In the old process, only circulation is the point of the value chain where readers are involved. The new process, however, should engage readers in each point, from acquisitions, cataloging, to circulation and preservation. We should also extend the value chain. In the past, we were satisfied with giving information, but did not care how information was used. Now we should go further to the process of problem solving of the users. For instance, during World Expo of 2010, the Shanghai Library provides information, organized lectures, edited consultation reports, and also joined international team for drafting Shanghai Declaration and other important documents. The Shanghai Library has recently opened a learning commons called New Space for Creativity. It is equipped with 3D printers, the digital sand table, computers with internet access, multimedia design resources, and discussion spaces. Designers and inventors have become regulars here. Now that Shanghai is building itself into a capital of design, the value of our library will be demonstrated through providing information and tools for innovators. Library becomes a learning environment, and the librarian's job is to create conditions conducive to the communication among people and between people and information. Librarians are not only providers of information, but also collaborators with users. Taking a good example of digital humanities, neither pure digitization nor simple humanities studies. It is an innovative cooperation between librarians and humanities researchers. Digitization has changed space and time. As a result, people could converse or dialogue with ancestors through analysis of historical literature. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Han Dynasty, where about 2,000 years ago, when paper was invented and used, the nobility still preferred bamboo strips, bamboo slips, and silk books, regarding the latter as a decent carrier for human wisdom. 2,000 years later, since then, some people favor printed books, despite that digital technology has left a profound impact on our lives. My grandson is 2 years old. One day, I caught him rubbing a book cover into holes, mistaking it as similar to iPad that can be slid to open. The next generation will be born with the idea that books and people can converse, and they will embark on their journey with such imagination. The carrier of information will change with the times. We are working on information, not carrier. We should develop one library, as I call it, which has all the carriers of information. Our mission is to make them alive and valuable. This is an era of diversity. We have no final say on readers' learning habit, but we can influence them and lead them forward. I have given my answer. I will not receive a full credit, I'm sure, because there will be better answers. As long as the library survives, its value will be questioned and discussed forever. Thank you, Ms. Elaine, for giving me a try, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wu. You've reminded me that you were one of the first people that I burdened with existential questions about the future of libraries. So thank you very much. Indeed, for myself, my visits to China have always filled me with wonder about the rapid changes that libraries go through and the massive digitization effort that is being supported by the Chinese government to bring learning resources to all parts of China. So maybe we have a chance to talk about that also. And I'd like to give the floor now to Dr. Shalini Earth to give us her view about the future of libraries.
Good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, especially the National Library Board of Singapore and Elaine and her team, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with such a distinguished, illustrious audience and the community here. I'm truly honored and humbled by this invitation. Well, as you can see, I have both. That perhaps, in a way, kind of defines the moment that we are in. Because when this invitation came about the future of the book, or the summit of the book, and then I have to speak on the future of the libraries, I was, coming from one of the ancient civilizations. It's a habit to look back or look at the past in order to envision the future. Because certainly, when we look at the past, because when I heard this, we have been talking about the future of libraries. There is nothing new about it, at least for the last 15 or 10 years or so, since the, I would say, advent of the internet. Then my mind went back to the time when I kind of entered this profession as a student of library information science. In fact, at the interview for the admission for this, one of the professors in the interview committee asked me, why do you want to do this course on library information science? I said, I love books. That's where I want to do this course. Then he said, then you are not going to be a good librarian. Why? Because he said, you love books so much, you don't want to lend it to others. You don't want to give it to others. So I decided to be a teacher of library information science so that I can do both. In the sense, I don't have to lend books, but at the same time, I would be in the profession of library information science. Now, when I said looking back, my mind also went back to the early days of my time with the library information science profession. Then, because I was trying to see whether I can get some kind of a perspective on the future of libraries, what are those perspectives are. So, we grew up in the library information science field in the 1970s. I was a student of library information science in the 70s. So one of the must-reads of those times was the book by Licklider, The Libraries of the Future. I'm sure many of you have read the book or at least heard of the book, Libraries of the Future. And today, we are talking about the future of libraries. So what is the difference? Libraries of the future, Licklider, envision. It's more of, the network, all of those things which were not in existence at that time, okay? He has talked about so many things in this book, in that book of the almost, I would say, 50 years back, 1965, it was published. So he was envisioning a library of the kind that we are in today, of the times that we are in today, of the kind of networks that we are seeing today. However, we are here at this juncture worrying or concerned, or let's say sharing our angst about the future of libraries. So in a way, what has changed from the envisioning of that future to what we are today? So when we look at that, I think it's just as wonderfully put forward in the morning by our predecessor speaker here, that the future is bright, it's secure. It's the kind of future that we are going to be happy about because I am also an invitrator, eternal optimist, because it's the kind of future that our children, our grandchildren are going to actually secure and then shape that future. So from this perspective, I thought I would reimagine the library of the future from different perspectives. One of the perspectives that I would like to look at in the reimagination of the library, again, is not very new, going back in one sense. That is the perspective of minds and spaces. I would like to call that as minds and spaces perspective. What I mean by this minds and spaces perspective of the library is the kind of the interaction, that is, look at library as that wonderful space, the physical space, which provides an environment for all of us. When I say all of us, I mean the librarians or the other stakeholders, plus the consumers or the customers, as a place of engagement, as a place of inspiration, and as a place for joy. So let us envision or imagine the library to be that space. I'm not saying it's not that space now. When you look at this library, I imagine that it is here. It is that kind of a space that we are talking about when we say that it is that space which has this interaction between the minds of people and then the various things that are surrounding us. Well, in this context, let me quote Nicholas Kerr, who calls this kind of an engagement with the spaces that we talk about with a very, what I would call as the book that he has written. Nicholas Kerr in 2006 has written a book called A Place, Not a Place, Reflection and Possibility in Museums and Libraries. That's the title of the book. Of course, this was originally published as Minds in Museums and Libraries, the Cognitive Management of Cultural Institutions. So in this book, I'm using this as a reference primarily because that kind of reflects the perspective that I would reimagine rather, the library of the future to be. That is, whether you are talking about libraries or museums or even the parks, they make, because according to Nicholas Kerr, they make similar situations wherein you are engaged with the objects around you, whether natural or physical objects, and they offer that kind of cognitive experiences to people. And the key here is cognitive experiences which integrate the past with the present, bringing in a history of knowing, reflecting, and understanding. That is the unique, I would call it as the differentiator of the library, as compared to all other things which we consider as our competitors, such as the internet or the Google. Particularly in India, everyone looks, library profession is looking at the Google as our arch enemy or the rival. The Googleization of the world, has it actually killed the libraries? So in that sense, I would like to focus on this space, library, imagining the library as that space, or focusing on the space, primarily because this is one place which can easily provide you the kind of an experience wherein you are actually interconnecting the past and the present in order to envision the future. So that's one of the important aspects. So the central metaphor, according to Nicholas Kerr, and this is a place, not a place. So you look at the library not as a place, but as that kind of an environment which allows you to integrate the past and in the present. So where else can one imagine that kind of a institution, that kind of a space, wherein you can effortlessly move? Of course, we could do some of these things even on the internet. But the kind of engagement that you have in a library in this context is very unique. And I would say that is one way for the library profession or the library stakeholders to reposition libraries. When I talk about the physical space as a place, well, one other thing that comes to my mind as an analogy, or you can say as a comparison, at least which has happened in India, In India, a cafe chain has been introduced since the last couple of years called Cafe Coffee Day. And Cafe Coffee Day was introduced a couple of years back, as I said, when there was a decline in the consumption of coffee. In fact, youngsters, unlike my generation or our generation, youngsters in India at least do not consume as much coffee as we used to do. However, Cafe Coffee Day has become a successful chain of cafe. And what is their position? That is, a lot can happen over coffee. So that is the USP of Cafe Coffee Day. That is, they are not selling coffee there, but they are talking about a lot can happen over coffee. So I would say libraries should position in this way. A lot can happen in a library, rather than just saying it's only the book or the e-book or the journal, what have you. So that's the analogy that I would like to bring in here in this context of how do we reposition or reimagine the library. That is one of the what I call as the minds and spaces perspective. The second perspective that I would like to bring in, naturally in today's world, can we ignore the social perspective? The social perspective, because today social media is all over the place. You cannot imagine, certainly not just the young people, including the old people like us, cannot imagine a day without the Facebook or the social media. So in this day of Facebook or social media, because Facebook, at least as far as India goes, probably it's the third largest Facebook population in the world after US and Brazil. So you can imagine, I mean, given that, of course, given our 1.2 billion population, it is still small. But given the digital divide that exists in India, given the fact that there is only a small percentage of the people who have access to the internet, who have the wherewithal to be on the Facebook or the internet, this is a significant figure for us from India. So if that is the position of a particular society, then certainly we need to reimagine libraries in this perspective, whether you are talking about physical or digital libraries. Well, digital libraries, I have been championing the cause of digital libraries in India for the last 15 years. So naturally, I mean, we have reached a stage. Let me talk briefly about this digital libraries itself. There was a time when, that is in the 1990s, end of the 1990s, we were very keen to use that phrase, digital libraries. So as part of the digital libraries group globally, since the last 1 or 2 years, we have been debating whether we should drop the word digital from this phrase of digital libraries. All of us know the reason. Why? Because when we say libraries today, it is by default, it is a digital library. So do we need to use the word, phrase digital library anymore? That's the discussion that's going on in our group, international group. I belong to a group called the NDLTD, Network Digital Library of Thesis and Dissertations. So here, for the last 1 year, we have been debating whether we should retain the word digital or not. So that speaks about how far we have come. So digital libraries, when I'm championing the cause of digital libraries, when we are talking about going social, these digital libraries are one way to go social very easily, in addition to the fact that I talked about in the first point, that is about the space being the social space for people to come and enjoy the library, physical library. So today, libraries, digital libraries, have to go social. So that's a second important perspective that I would like to bring to this discussion, that we need to be looking at how social the library can be, whether it's a digital or the physical one. So the spaces in the library, in the physical library, need to be more and more social. Well, already many libraries are becoming such a social one. We just now heard about Elaine talk about one of her colleagues talking about a particular library having a sauna in the, say we hear about a library, a public library in some place in Europe having a water slide, some public library having something else. So these are the social, going social could mean all of these things or one of these things, so whichever works. The idea here is, well, we should move with the times. So the days of shh, no noise, that library image has to change to a library where it is a hub. It is the community that we are talking about. Let the libraries become these, I mean, they have always been in one sense. community centers. What I'm trying to say here is we need to reimagine, that's why I use the word reimagine, the library to be that community center. Rather than, we heard Elaine and others talk about the focus not being just the books, but the focus to be on the community and books as one of the engagement with the community. So I would say libraries, the second perspective that I would like to bring in here is the perspective of libraries as social spaces, wherein people physically come and have that engagement, wherein we create. Well, this is a very good example of library being, this very hall here, becoming a social space, wherein students or faculty or other general public come and engage. Because that's again going back to the first point. Space or the buildings are one of the major assets that the library has. Let us leverage on the physical asset that we have, which Google's or the internet does not have. So one USP that we have, one of the major assets that the library or the library profession has is the physical space. So if we can leverage that to make it really social. So we should engage with our young population saying that a lot can happen in this space of a library, come to the library. Then the third perspective that I have as far as the reimagining or reinventing the library is library as a publisher. See, libraries have generally been on the other end of the life cycle of information. The life cycle of information from the generation to the consumption. So libraries have existed primarily as that public memory. See, instead of the individual memory, you have this public memory. Library is the public memory wherein the public come and then consume information because you cannot afford to, in some sense or the other, to have the information that you want. So libraries traditionally have focused on the consumption side of the life cycle of information. I would say today, a time has come when we probably may have to look at, and we have a strong point there, to look at starting at the generation end of the life cycle of information. That is where I would say library as a publisher. That is, for any organization, whether it's a public library or an academic library or any library for that matter, or a national library, libraries could look at becoming the publisher for their consumers. That is what is happening in the open access movement that we are here. I'm part of the open access movement that's happening elsewhere. So here we are talking about institutional repositories. We are talking about universities actually, or university libraries becoming that institutional repository. This is essentially a case for that perspective, the third perspective that I wanted to bring in here, that of libraries becoming the publisher for their stakeholders. So because libraries have that mechanism, they provide that platform for people. Of course, we have the internet itself as a platform for the vanity press that we talk about, but still this could be a more organized collective effort for an university, for a national library, or for any other library to be the publisher. Then the fourth point, or the fourth perspective that I would like to the fourth perspective that I would like to end with my comments here is the librarian as a concierge. So let the librarian or the library profession take on this role of that personalized service to the user, doing the lot of, because there is too much of information overload. So become the concierge for your users. So that's the other perspective. I would reimagine the library to be, not just the information provider, because it's high time that we do not focus on access alone, because traditionally we have focused on access and we have too many now, technology, we cannot beat with the technology, we cannot even compete with the technologies or the Google. Let us leverage on the strengths that the libraries have. So with this, I would like to end my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shalini, also for sharing the great secret of popular libraries, which is to have good coffee and good conversations. But I would just like to move on quickly and invite our next speaker, Claudia, to share her perspective from both a European and from her experience in Qatar as well.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Ambassador Tomiko, and also Elaine. and the National Library Board. I'm very happy to be back here in Singapore and see the development, and the development here is very fast. And in Qatar, it's nearly as fast as it is here. So I really enjoy to be now there, the project director of the Qatar National Library. And if I talk about a little bit of the situation of Qatar, it is that we had there some old public libraries, and also with some elements of national library services. Nevertheless, if you compare it to what's going on in the world with libraries, it's really not comparable, because it has stayed like it was when it was created in 1962 or in the 70s and 80s. Now it's, the whole country is completely changing. There is a bus in every part of the world. There is in every part of the country. They're developing the infrastructure. They are building trains and metros and trams in the same time, and as they are building museums and libraries and archives. And this is due to the situation that Qatar is the richest country of the world, and is in the moment spending the money, not just to earn more money, but really to spending the money for the people of the country. And this is also especially for education, and I think they look a little bit also to Singapore, and to learn that the human potential is the most important for the future. And for this, especially Qatar Foundation was created to develop a situation where you can have an American degree if you study in Qatar. This is very important for a lot of the girls there who might not go out of the country. So they can study there, they can get their bachelor on a high-level degree, and now they are introducing masters, and I'm very happy that they just introduced a Master of Library and Information Science from the University College in London. And so you can study now in Qatar a Master in Library and Information Studies starting in September, October this year. This is very important, because when you build a new national library from the scratch, you don't have the stuff, you don't have the material, and in the way that Qatar Foundation is supporting the country to develop also these cultural, educational, and the library activities, we are very happy that we get the support from the highest level. That means from the board of the Qatar Foundation. This is chaired by Her Highness Sheikh Moza, who is a very, very important person for the whole development of this part in Qatar. And when I was invited here, and I heard about this topic, this wonderful topic, a book by any other name, and then what is the future of libraries? I thought, oh no, not again. Future of libraries, we are talking about this for such a long time. And I remember that I made my first presentation when I was still very young, in 1994, about the future of libraries, and telling everybody that the libraries will die very soon. I made a video, I put a part of the video of the transformers, that everything has to be transformed, and but I also saw that there were some elements which might hinder the immediately death of the libraries, like copyright and some other elements. And then at the end of this presentation in 1994, I put this nice song of 25-25. So that is the idea when the library will die. Maybe it will be a little bit earlier, but we can see. So nevertheless, for the next future of the next two generations who are here in the forum, I have 7 elements why libraries survive. So one of the elements is we are surviving at least as much as the development of the publishers are well and are good, because I think libraries are very much related to the development of publishing and information. And all our changes has nothing to do with ourselves, that we love to have e-books or we love to do anything virtual, but it has to do that the content we are dealing with is no longer in the form of the book, but is also in very different forms. And we have embraced music and video, movie streaming, music streaming, and we have seen that libraries are no longer about books. They're all about content, and they have been like this from the beginning. So when we talk about the book, I don't refer to the book anymore with the libraries, because most of the people, they get it wrong, what we're doing. And so I refer to the content. Nevertheless, the second point is still the book. Because what is a book? This question was, I think, handled with maybe more depth already this day, but let me just come back to something, how I see the book. The book itself is, in some way, something which is really more in depth. It is longer. It is not like a Twitter bit or anything else, like a short information. It's something like a longer piece somebody has worked on. And it should have some logic, even if some books have not. But it's very important that there is something from the beginning to the end. It was explained already here. And this is what we normally call a book. And even if it's an e-book, and if we read it electronic, it has this kind of elements, that it has more in-depth thinking, development of a theme. And I think this is a very important part, even of our future work in the libraries, that we are dealing with this kind of content. That we are not just dealing with bits and bytes, with very short information, with what I say always is something like the Sesame Street, you know what that is? Sesame Street, Sesame, how it's called? Sesame Street, the Sesame Street generation, because the Sesame Street was created education in a 3-minute movie. 3 minutes, no more. And I think it's even when you now yourself, think about yourself, you're looking at a YouTube video, maybe of a library, 6 or 7 minutes, you stop after 3 minutes, I'm sure. You are not looking at the whole thing. So that is what we are used to. We are used to have these very short bits and bytes, and the Twitter is a very nice part of it, and also Google Scholar, which gives you some information about the book, and you know you don't have to read it, or you might read a little bit more of it. Yeah. So that's your, and I think this is something where the library still has a space in it, because it gives you a choice of books here, or even of e-books, and you can just go flip through it. I even flip through e-books. Even some people say they don't do, but I do. And then you know, you don't have to read this all. But there are others you want to read, and you might read it in paper or electronic. I think it's up to the person and it's up to you. And I also believe that there is a lot of change with the new generation. Even that we have some young people who explicitly say they are not going to read e-books. They want real books. And that is a challenge for Qatar National Library at the moment, because this library has no building. The building is now have a roof already, and it's getting up, and it's looking nice, but it's not there. You cannot use it as a library. So we are in portal cabins, and they are always asking, where is the library? I said the library is digital. The library is there, it's digital. And we have already 3,000 library members. They have signed up, and they use our electronic resources. And we have all these nice resources, like if I can tell you about Springer, where we also buy electronic resources which we can keep, even if Springer is no longer there, or we are no longer there, or we can no longer pay. For the actual years, maybe we have the archive material. And we always try to get this archive material. We have nice things from Sanyo, Overdrive, ProQuest, and all the others. So you have a big elements. And then you see that This National Library is not only a national library, it's also a university library, it's also a public library, but I come to that later. The third, why I think the library will stay on, is that the development of learning on the go is a very important development. And in Qatar, 75% of the population have a smartphone, and they use the smartphone really to access the internet and to get information and Twitter a lot. They Twitter more than they use Facebook. And it's also something where people use it much more for learning. Even if you look for language learning, I don't know if you have ever tried language learning in the internet. There are so great elements. I'm just trying to learn a little bit Arabic. So there are great YouTube features. There are very nice other elements, apps for the iPad. So whatever you think, you will find there. And this is really very, very helpful for somebody who wants to learn. And a lot of people are doing this, and a lot of people are also downloading what we have for the library to download for the people, to use this material where we pay the license for. And I think it's very important that we enforce these elements of learning on mobile device. And I see that Singapore is taking really a step out here and is very, very in the first part of development, and not in the first part, but the real the development of this. And I think we can learn from Singapore here a lot, because it's exactly what I think the people need. And education, especially if it's free online education or low-priced, people are very happy to have it. I just let me show you. Qatar is a country where you might be able to get something from Amazon, but it's difficult to get. And it's always difficult to get anything from anywhere as a real book. We have this kind of, in the Arab countries, and especially in the Gulf, we have this kind of book fairs where you go and you buy there. You buy at the book fairs. And then you have the books maybe for the next time. You get some, there is a possibility to get books from Amazon, but it's not really used. And the people are asking, so what is the National Library? Will it just stay for digital, or will it become real books? When will you have your real books? And especially for learning or for young people, like I had an Indian father who wanted to have more reading for his 12-year-old daughter. The daughter is reading 4 books a week. And the parents cannot cope with it. They don't find the books in Qatar. They cannot buy all this on Amazon, and they're really coming to us and say, what can we do? When are you opening the children's library? When do you have? And that is something where you really can see that really people, they want this, not only for learning, but this is a very special, I think, a very special daughter. She's even a creative writer and has won a prize already, yes. Very special. Okay, but there is another thing. I think there is another future. The number 4, I would say, is the future of libraries also lies in the language diversity we present. I think it's coming too short here that everybody speaks English. You think the world is English. It's not. It's not at all in Qatar, and I know there are other countries here. It's not in their countries. And the libraries, they have to serve those population of their origin. And like in Qatar, we have to serve people from Arab countries, Indian, Philippine, and Nepalese, and Sri Lankan, and a lot others. So that is what is very important, that you create content, like Arab content should be more on it, and that is a part where also Qatar Foundation tries to do more in translating Wikipedia and other aspects. So it's very important for libraries to support these elements. Then there is, I think, a future in libraries, number 5. It lies in the programs and activities, but it was already talked about this. There is a lot of talking, so I don't think I have to discuss so much. But the program and activities, it helps us to discuss more in depth the content of the library. And that is, I think, is something which was explained very, very nicely before. Then the other future of the library, number 6, is design and presentation. People don't want to use old libraries anymore. They don't feel well there. They need, for creative thinking, you need a creative environment. You need a beautiful, a wonderful environment. And I think it's very important, the design of the library, and the design has to do with a coffee. And as librarians, like you see, you know all these stories about book and wine. Need 2 more minutes. I need 2 more minutes. Book and wine, you know, and I think if you know libraries and if you know IFLA, it's all about libraries and lunch and dinner and all this. And this is a part. So we have fought for a restaurant in the new National Library, a very important part, and the architect Rem Koolhaas was very happy about this. So the next, number 7 and the last, is the future of libraries. I think is also the breakdown of walls. Breakdown of walls, I mean 2 aspects. One, the most important is the breakdown of walls to the internet. So there are a lot of countries and there are a lot of societies where not everybody has access to the internet. And we sometimes don't see this. We just overlook that a lot of people, they don't have access, or not in the way that they really can read e-books or that they can read something more. I think it's very important. And especially there are a lot of small libraries not having internet access. And I think it's important that at least all the libraries in the world get internet access, so that there is a breakdown of the walls between national libraries, university libraries, and public libraries, so that in the smallest public library, you can access the knowledge of the National Library, and you can download on your iPad all this heritage material. And I think there is a lot to do, and this is a very important last future of the library where I think there is still a lot of future. So just let me come to the end. After these 7 aspects I want to contribute today. In reality, I also believe that there is no future as a book as an institution, as was referred before by Stephen Cole. Maybe we can discuss a date, but I'm not sure. But what I think is very important when you have read the Financial Times from 2 days before, there was this article about vanity or visionary, and it talks about those people who have made their money with Google, Amazon, and all this, and how they invest their money. And they invest their money in space travels, in private space travels, in very extreme and visionaries, like, what was it, I think meat production, a special artificial meat production, all kind of asteroid mining, all kind of very visionary projects, and they are sure that some of them will make money in the future. And I think libraries are needed to train and educate all these people who want to work with these visionaries in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for those 7 points. Let's move on quickly to Bill Macnaught, an old friend, National Librarian of New Zealand. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Elaine. It's a great pleasure to be back here in Singapore. Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. Let me start by saying that at the National Library of New Zealand, we collect, connect, and co-create knowledge to power New Zealand. That's what we do. There is nothing in that statement about the book, and I completely agree with previous comments about the unhelpful clinging to the book as being the business of the library. And I think some of the difficulty that libraries have today is because they are inextricably linked with the book as a physical object, and that many decision makers see the future of the book changing with e-publications and so on. The comment that I hear far too often from people in positions of authority in local government and look after public libraries in New Zealand is that with Google and ebooks, we don't need public libraries anymore, do we? And I'll come back to that question later, but let me start by just asking the question, what is the purpose of the library? And of course, there are many different kinds of libraries with many different purposes. There has been a lot of talk today about the learning and educational importance of libraries, and clearly that is one of the major reasons why libraries exist. In New Zealand, the legislation says that our purpose is to enrich the economic and cultural life of the nation. And the economic role of the National Library, for me, goes absolutely to the heart of the last comment that Claudia made a moment ago about our contribution to the knowledge economy, the way that libraries can support innovation. And an important aspect of that for me is the fact that we have custody of a very rich collection of published material, a very rich collection of unpublished material, manuscript material, relating to the history of New Zealand and Pacific Islands. We also connect people to the rest of the world's knowledge, and it's that combination of knowledge which I think is an important contributor to innovation today. And that's where our connection and co-creation verbs come into play very strongly. But let me just dwell on the collect side of it for a moment. So, yes, we have been collecting physical books for many, many years, and since 2003, our legislation in New Zealand gave us authority to collect e-books as well. Anything published in an e-format, we were enabled by legislation to collect. So we not only collect legal deposit published hardback books, but we also collect a copy of any digital publications. We do a web harvest from time to time to capture a snapshot of digital life in New Zealand that might otherwise be ephemeral and lost in future. So the collections that we put together are an extremely important part of what we do, but by no means all of what we do. And as the world changes around us, I think there are important questions about how we use our collections. We have these copies of publications on legal deposit, which are available for people to come and consult in the National Library in Wellington, in the capital city. But in an age when the technology permits us to make that material available around the country, we are starting to explore the possibilities of making that legal deposit material available through a network of libraries across the country. Big question marks around that with the discussions with publishers, of course. I'll come back to that shortly as well. The other important part of what we do in our legislation is around the cultural role of the library. And many people would see the National Library in Wellington as being a real centre of cultural strength, a major player in the cultural life of the nation. And we help people to produce new books and so on with the research that they do in the Alexander Turnbull Library within the National Library. The economic and cultural life of New Zealand does depend on people being able to use the materials that we have collected. And of course, they can only do that if they are literate. And there is a fundamental issue for us in New Zealand libraries where we have a situation where the vast majority of New Zealanders are very capable and literate. And if you look at the OECD statistics, in New Zealand, we perform very well above average for most students in New Zealand. But there is a significant minority of students who perform well below the poor level of OECD literacy levels. Now, we believe very clearly that the research has told us long since that there is a direct connection between reading for pleasure and your ability to achieve well in educational results at school. We think that's a well-proven fact, and therefore we are focusing considerable efforts now in our collaboration with school libraries and public libraries to address the levels of literacy through encouraging the joy of reading. And there are a great many initiatives going on across New Zealand and across libraries throughout the world, of course, encouraging reading. But I think there is much more that we can do in the future to address specific issues around literacy. I think here in Singapore you have very high literacy levels, but that's certainly not the case throughout the world. The collaboration that we have with public libraries is an important part of the connect verb that we have in our statement for New Zealand National Library. For many years now, we have been supplying free internet access to public libraries around the country so that, again, as Claudia said, the smallest public libraries do have access to the world's knowledge through the internet. That, I think, could again be extended further, and we can make better use of the content that is available digitally, but only if we can collaborate more effectively at scale as a library service, as a library sector in New Zealand. The question that's often asked about the value of libraries, public libraries in particular, is, I think, partly because they're seen as a recreational facility, and the learning that can take place, the access to basic democratic knowledge that's essential is often overlooked because too many people think of public libraries simply as recreational facilities. Of course, many people come to the public library simply for enjoyment, and that, of course, is a perfectly legitimate reason for people coming to our libraries. They actually enjoy going to get a good book to read. There was some research recently about the reasons why people visited museums in the United Kingdom, and the researchers asked museum directors, why do you think people come to your museums? And typically the answers would be very noble reasons about they come to improve themselves, they come to learn about other cultures and so on. And the researchers actually discovered that the main reason people go to museums in the UK was for a good day out. And I think we mustn't lose sight of the fact that for many of our customers, they actually enjoy coming to the library. And in the library, they have the ability to pursue curiosity-driven research. And in too many other libraries, that curiosity-driven research is not seen as a legitimate use of the library or indeed of the individual's time. So for the future, I think it's actually a very positive future for libraries. We have a hugely important role to play in two particular aspects, I think. One is about the democratization, let me say that again, democratization of knowledge, which our public libraries, our national libraries, I think, play a hugely important part in. But I think the affordability of content is the other major reason why nations will continue to depend on having a good library service available. Yes, the technology is available across Amazon to get all sorts of books, but I don't know anybody who can afford to buy all the books that they might want to read. None of the avid readers that I know would be able to afford that, and that's always been an important benefit of having the the library available is that we open up that whole world of knowledge and make it freely available at the point of use. I think the point that Stephen made about the future of the book is absolutely right, that we will be looking at a digital environment soon. But all the more reason, I think, why public libraries and national libraries need to work together with school libraries as well to make sure that the wide range of content available digitally is actually affordable to the individual libraries up and down the country. I think that's probably the other main point that's been coming through this afternoon is the importance of us operating together at scale as a library sector. The library brand is such an important and strong brand in every country around the world. People value the library, they love the library. Imagine if we could truly get our act together as a library sector and operate at global scale in ways that we perhaps can't imagine at the moment. But if we operated together, think of the spending power that libraries combined have, and then you can start to see how we might truly operate on the same sort of scale as Amazon or Google if libraries combined operated together to ensure the continued access and affordability to knowledge for every citizen in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. I found it very interesting that one of the questions that had been uppermost in my mind before this panel was, what would the role of the book be in the future of libraries? And I guess what we heard was that libraries were unanimously abandoning the physical book if the wrapper were changing for the future. But I think this has been a very interesting presentation from all the different parts of the world that we've brought together. And I wonder whether anybody would like to put some questions to the panel before I surface some of the questions that I also have that we could discuss. Sorry, over there?
Hello, my name is Shubhigi. I'm an artist and writer, and I also lecture in art theory at a local university. I mention this because as a lifelong lover of books, and I grew up with my parents' library, I know that you all seem to think that it's essential that we abandon the book form, but I teach students ranging in ages from 17 to their late 50s, and most of the students at least who are who went to school in say the 90s and on, who have grown up in the digital age, so to speak, are unable to actually read. I don't know how else to put this, I can't really be polite about it, but it's quite bad. I've even had students tell me, you mean I have to read a book? And we can look at it as, it's a comment on how, times are changing and so on, which I think is a very glib way to look at it. I think the democratization of libraries is all very well, but as we've seen with museums, there's a tendency towards Disneyfication. And I think there may be a danger in that. If the inability to be a solitary, deep reader is going to hamper even university-level students, I don't know about you, but I'm a bit afraid. So what are your thoughts about that?
Thank you. I have to clarify, it's not that the book is abandoned, but that the physical book, it's not something that we should be fixated on. But that's a very important question, and maybe we can put to Bill. Would you like to go first?
Yes, if I can just clarify that it's certainly not that we would abandon the book. I think the point that Stephen was making is that the physical book will abandon libraries. Mm-hmm. In due course. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to recognize the reality of that future. For us in New Zealand, it's really important that we continue to use the physical book, particularly with young children. I see us continuing to use that in the foreseeable future as a way of drawing people into the importance of reading and stories. But I do think that there is an economic reality about the shift to digital as the way that what we currently think of as books will be available for libraries to reuse. Can I also, while I'm at it, can I just make the point that I think your point, Stephen, about why would you ever get to one copy of the book? I absolutely think that the technology means it is totally sensible for us in New Zealand as National Library to have one digital version of the book. We already collect it through legal deposit, but we can't use it. And I do feel as though we do need a complete rethink of the arrangement between libraries and publishers and other rights holders, so that we use the technology to full effect, that every school child in New Zealand would be able to look at the book. And if they all wanted to look at it at the same time, we should have an affordable way of enabling that as well.
I would like to say something when you say people, especially young people, they might not be able to read anymore a full book, and that this is a challenge. Did I understand right? Yeah, the nature of reading. Yes, I think, yes, I'm not just, I'm really believing that we can do the same with the electronic form when we give a little bit more time for maybe another generation. And I also remember that we have a change in the attitude of parents. Like my parents, they didn't want to allow me to read in the night. I have to lock off the close light or whatever and shut off the light, and then I have to sleep, and I would love to read at that time, so I read under the cover. And I know from some colleagues in Qatar, some Indian colleagues there, they were not allowed to read fiction because their parents thought fiction is a bad thing for young girls to read. So they only could read historical fiction or historical material. And I think today most of the parents would be happy if any of the child would read a book like that, but they won't love them to have the iPad in the bed. But this will change, and I think you have to adjust also your own attitude to the material, because the content might be the same, might be not, but a new generation also might have new content.
Yes, so when we talk about book, we talk about knowledge, especially to the librarians. We take book as the knowledge. I myself love book because think of the book, and the writers spend a long time to produce a book. And also think of the editors, publishers, they spend their energy on editing the books. And also think of librarians will keep the books. The books will stay, but the future is digital. This is the reality. So we will keep everything, every carrier that is, containing the knowledge.
I would like to add 2 or 3 points to your question. I think when we look at book, you are kind of, talking about 2 aspects of the book. Book as a genre, or as a, a content within this as a form. The other one is the book in the format that we are talking about, whether it is in the digital or the print. Now, first taking the digital or the print, there are 2 or 3 aspects to this itself. I would think, this is something that, in fact, I have asked my son a couple of years back when he was still young, whether you would like to read a printed book. Because he's a computer scientist, he said, Mom, whole day I'm looking at the computer screen. When I come home, I would like to read actually a printed one. So you can look at it from that repositioning perspective. Whole day you're looking at so many different things on the screen. So you could look at the printed one as a, as a change or as a break from that, because for the eyes and various, that's one way of actually, as parents or as librarians, we could tell the young generation, instead of looking at the screen all the time, do this. Then the second one is, it's my take on this book. When you think of book reading as for your professional academic purposes, perhaps digital would prevail, would dominate. But reading a book for leisure, I would still think that the printed book would be the one. When I'm reading fiction or any other book which I'm just reading, well, I would still look at, most of the people would still look at the printed book. At least in India, for example, I can give you statistics of how the print medium is actually increasing by leaps and bounds in the last couple of years. Whether you take newspapers, in fact, the world's largest English newspaper is from India, Times of India, and it is increasing every day. The circulation is increasing. And similarly, book publishing is also increasing. There are different channels are increasing. Television channels are also increasing. We have the highest number of television channels. We have everything, but still the book is increasing. The printed word I'm talking about, primarily because people want all of these things too. So that's my take on the printed book continuing to live with us.
Thank you. There are a lot of people who want to ask questions. John, you put your hand up first.
Let me share a little bit of experience on this question of definitions and point out that the Center for the Book in the Library of Congress was created in 1977 by Daniel Borston, and it was created legislatively. And Dr. Borston was one who, when he was, and I was there, but not yet been named the founding father of this, or the founding executive director, as it turned out. Dr. Borston is the founding father. We had a large board of people, and there was quite a debate about its name. In those days, obviously, the threat, so-called threat, was in technology was television. And it turned out that one of Dr. Borston's real purposes in creating the Center for the Book was actually to be able to use television and the new technologies to promote books and reading. And by the time the legislation got through the United States Congress, which he asked for, our purpose came out to stimulate public interest in books and reading. We have since expanded that to say that our purpose is to stimulate public interest in books, reading, literacy, and libraries. Literacy was not really a major issue in 1977. It's hard to believe, but it's true. It was an issue, but it wasn't identified as an issue. And of course, I added libraries as a librarian and seeing the mix. But Dr. Borston's initial response to people in the board who said, "You're too old-fashioned just talking about the book," was what we've really heard here. It's not the physical book, it's the culture of the book, what the book represents. And of course, this morning in the talk about books as symbols, it's the symbolism of the book as a symbol of learning, of much more than the physical book, but it doesn't exclude it. So when I agreed to be the executive director, I had no choice, but nonetheless, I realized that as a historian, I also wanted to make certain that we got a historical element into it. So our purpose now is, of course, to stimulate public interest in books, reading, literacy, and libraries, and to encourage the scholarly study of book culture and print culture as it relates to society. I guess my point is that we shouldn't get hung up too much on the definitional part of this, because it does have an all-encompassing really umbrella for learning and books and literacy and libraries as they come together. And I have needed to make this distinction because the Center for the Book from the beginning required private funding, which I didn't realize was going to be part of the situation. My salary was paid, but suddenly we were started with some contributions from publishers, $20,000 from McGraw-Hill, which in 1977 was a fair amount of money, and then another gift from Time Life Books, and I thought, gosh, this won't be so tough. Well, of course, those donations not only went down to $1,000 a year, but also most publishing donations have disappeared entirely, and we rely now primarily on donations from individuals, corporations, transfers from other government agencies, but we have succeeded in performing this catalytic function, and I get worried when people talk about it being an either-or situation. Of course, libraries encompass all media, content is the king, but the word book means a lot to people. To us, it means what we've discussed, the symbolism, but gosh, to many other people that we're talking about in other parts of the world, it's all about books, but what it is learning, and the book is the method for learning. Sorry to go on, but this is a topic that I've dealt with before.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Ismail, you've been waving at me.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on something Shubiki said about the young people that she finds that cannot read the whole book and so on. Both writing and reading is a solitary exercise. It's very largely a solitary exercise. And good books, great books, not just for learning factual information, great literature and so on, is complex, multi-layered. There's a certain appreciation of the language, the subtleties of language that are important. And it takes time to do it, time to appreciate it. But it will coexist. And to me, the best analogy I can give is the difference between fast food and gourmet cuisine. A lot of young people don't have time to sit and have a 2-hour dinner, maybe enjoy the company of others in it, or certainly wouldn't know how to prepare one, and they just want a quick fast food. And that's all right, because statistically, as was mentioned, all books are increasing, both in print, both in people writing, both in number of readers. Everything is increasing. So we shouldn't be too concerned. In the past, after all, those who produced the books and those who read them were a very small minority of society. So today, the number of people who come to libraries, the number of people who come to you, the young people, is much, much larger. The number of literate people is much larger. And what was a very small percentage has increased, but it's still a small percentage of that much larger number. So I don't think we should be too concerned about that. But the libraries have a particular responsibility to reach out to the larger number. And as a result of trying to reach out to the larger number, we will have to have a combination of both the fast food outlet takeaway and the gourmet restaurant.
I have a lot of people trying to ask questions. Can I just take one last one? Ken, is that you over there? Yeah.
I hope it's not the last word on the demise of the printed book, because I'm someone who has a foot in both camps. I'm a very strong believer in the printed book, because I see it not only as an object and a tangible object, but it's one that's also a work of art. And I think by switching or thinking that the future of the book is purely a digital one, we can't get the same artistic or creative involvement or endeavor through a digital book, in my view. And having been someone who's worked on a few books and produced some as writer and publisher, I do believe very strongly that it's got the design and the tangible element that's so important. And just one last point, we're in danger, I think, of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Literally, I sort of see the production of a book as being a bit like having a baby, and as a man, that's not physically possible. But I have produced 2 books that have taken me 9 months from beginning to end. One took 2 years, which puts me in the elephant category, but I believe a book is very like producing a baby. And if there's some suggestion that in the future we have to do with virtual babies, and I don't accept that we should have virtual books. I still believe very strongly that we should have printed books. And as Max Hua said earlier, we can do it in a hybrid way. We can still be digital and we can still do print. And I feel very strongly that the artistic involvement in a book is so important, and the tangible part of it.
Thank you. I think we need to round up soon, but I guess I would say for myself, from the sound of the presentations and from most people here, that the future of libraries is in fact extremely bright. We feel that it would go on, whatever the wrapping, I think somebody said, that comes with the books. Libraries still continue to be a cultural institution that collects what is meaningful to the book-loving society. But I just wanted to ask each of you before we let you go, what if you had all the money in the world and no pesky policy makers to bother you? What would be the one thing you would want to do for your library to make it future-proof?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be marvelous if children in schools across our countries, people in public libraries could discover any book in the world and could have access to it, both to borrow and perhaps to buy straight away. Opening up all that sort of access would be terrific, but I also think that the libraries in the future are spaces for co-creation of new knowledge, and that the importance of space that you talked about earlier is an important one. And if money's no object, then let's have one in every community with the best broadband access available. That'd be good.
Yeah, if I had all the money, I would create that kind of a wonderful space or the happening place for the young people to come and hang out, and also for the older people like us to sit and reflect upon. So you would have both these social spaces where young people would come and hang out, discuss, both on the Facebook as well as on the real FaceTime. Then also for this, it's a space for reflection, as well as for, as you said, co-creation, co-enjoyment, etc. That would be my idea of a wonderful library space, which is the most happening place. So we can say a lot can happen over in the library.
That's my dream too. Thank you, Shalini. You have all the money in the world, don't you?
It's a very difficult. I just wanted to say it's a very difficult question for me. But what I want to say is that what money cannot buy is the excitement of the people. And that people are really coming to the library and that they're enjoying the place, that they're enjoying the services we have. And I think that is this challenge we have.
I think this is imagination, because only poverty produces energy. If we are very rich, I want all the libraries be a learning environment, not like libraries now, because the traditional library is really book-centered. But we hope libraries in future is people-centered, knowledge-based.
Thank you. And just to end off, I would like to share that I asked an intrepid 6-year-old what he would do if he had all the money in the world, and what would he do for his library. And he said, I would put the library in my Google glasses. And that really floored me. Okay. So on that note, thank you very much, everyone. And that ends the future of libraries.